Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome. How you doing today? I hope you're all doing well. Happy Monday as we move into the final game of the year tomorrow. The final game of the calendar year, of course, not the season. United sitting happily in level on points with 5th place, sitting in 6th place. If you'd have told me, I think we discussed this yesterday, but tomorrow we'd be going into a game with the chance to move into potentially the top 4. I think we'd all be really happy, and that's where we are today. But we can't be happy. We can't. We can't settle down. We can't relax. We can't just be calm for a minute and say, you know what? Let's just see where this road goes, because things are pretty much heading the right way and heading the way that we all expected. We can't. We must fight. We must argue, and we must discuss things that are of almost no consequence, simply because it is who we are as human beings. There has to be conflict. Even within the United fan base, there has to be so much conflict. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Amorim's quotes, the very, very amusing way that people see things, and all of that as well. But hello, Tommy. Enjoy. I hope you have a great time at Old Trafford, and hopefully they get the win there as well. How do you rate the season so far out of 10 at the halfway mark? It depends on what you mean by rate. Hi, Stuart. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you as always. Fruit Shoot, good to see you. If you're asking me to rate it like on a general overall scale, we're at about a 6. If you're asking me to rate it relative to the reality of our circumstances and expectations, probably about a 7. I think it's a bit above expectations, to be honest. I think it's a bit above expectations. But the second half of the season is a big key to that. If we keep doing what we're doing, I think we'll end up finishing potentially in Champions League places. And for me, that would be well above expectations going into the season. That would be at my high end of expectations. But as a whole for United, it's probably a 6, It's probably a 6 this season. The year itself the second half of last season was dreadful, horrible. So that was pretty bad as well. But yeah, I think that's the truth of it, right? I think most people expected us to struggle this season. I think a lot of people were talking about how, well, with Amorim, we're going to finish in 8th to 10th. I saw a lot of those takes starting the year, and it doesn't look like that's really possible that we're going to finish that low. And I think that, a lot of the disappointments we've had, you know what I mean? A lot of the disappointments that we've had, where we're looking at games and saying, well, that we lost that game, and that's disappointing, and that sucks, and that's rough, and all that. A lot of that, of course, when you flip it around the other way, it's almost like suffering from success. The fact is that if we'd won the games we were super disappointed about losing, we'd probably be sitting in 3rd place right now. And one could, of course, make the argument that United have been. And I'm going to make this argument right now, because I'm making this claim. On performance, I think United have been you can make a case that United have been the 3rd best team in the league on performance. And look, that doesn't make them the 3rd best team in the league. That doesn't make United the 3rd best team in the league, because executing, taking your chances, things like that are still a huge part of that. But on performance, I think United are the 3rd best team in the league right now, so far this season. But the gap between 3rd and the top 2 is really big, to be quite honest. It's more a matter of that, 3rd through now maybe 6th or 7th are pretty tight. And then there's another jump from there to like the 8th to 15th where it's tight. And then there's the relegation sides that are really bad this season. So, the bottom 3, 4, 5 teams are really bad. But, and I think that you could take that on the front end and say, how could it be worse? How could United be the 3rd best performing team in the league? But look at it. It's a claim as well of that doesn't make them close to City. That doesn't make us close to Arsenal. That's not it, right? But yeah, I mean, when you actually compare it to the alternatives, to the teams that are out there, and think about what games were United actually the worst team in. You know, what games did United actually get beat? We talked about this yesterday, right? Where they did not perform better. And then you watch other games. You can make this case for Villa, which it's worthy of praise, the fact that they've been incredible at executing their game plan and winning. But it's not like they've been good. I mean, they're XG terrorizing every single game. It works. Good for them. You know what I mean? But there is an unsustainability about that, but it's still working right now. And it's quite impressive. But yeah, I would say Brentford, Man City, and Everton were the 3 games this season that stand out to me to say we didn't deserve those games. Even then, I will remind you that against Brentford, we had a penalty at 2-1, should have had a red card as well, and missed the penalty. You know, we weren't good in that game, but we very, very much should have at least drawn, if not won that game. We missed a penalty at 2-1, and they should have had a man sent off. 100%, clearest red card you'll ever see. So I will remind you, even then, we didn't play well, but we didn't play really worse than Brentford either. It just was a bad game. Everton and City, though, we certainly, in my opinion, we got outplayed in those games. Brentford, I would still say we beat ourselves. We still beat ourselves. And that was the last one before, I think, by Yindir. You know, and both of those came before Lamens came in net. I think Everton's the only game since Lamens has come in where I felt, you know what, the other team played better than us. Interesting stuff. Yeah, exactly that. You can have that XG overperformance for a while. It does crash. Forest did it. Now look at them. Ten Hag did it. You saw what happened there. It doesn't always last. Villa might see it for most of this season, but you know, at some point the shots stop curling into that top corner, and then it all falls apart at that point in time. I mean, look at Bournemouth to start the year. The darlings of everything. The overperformance was huge. Areola was the best manager in football, and then suddenly they haven't won in 9 games. 9 games, I think it is. They haven't won. And they've dropped they could be headed into a relegation battle from being darlings after 9 games. Shit happens. You gotta watch those underlying numbers. But it's okay. So yeah, I would say as a review of the year, I probably need to do a year in review video, you know, where half of the year after Wolves, probably New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, have a video on the year in review. I think that would be a good one to give some more full takes and opinions on this. But yeah, I would say for me, it's above expectations this half of the season, to a degree, because I did make some predictions. So not reading that. Weird. Maybe it hasn't come through on my side yet. I did make some predictions that we would get into the top 5. The talk of the Devils guys were taking the piss out of Amorim for not giving youth a chance a week ago, and he debuts 3 of them. Anti-Amorim agenda is bad. It is, and it's been honestly a bit win after win after win after win for Amorim in that respect, where people keep saying he won't do this, he doesn't do that, and then he does, because he was always going to. And that's a great segue into the discussion that we have here, which is all of these comments, these talks, these discussions about, you know, changing the system and about this and that. And Amorim talking about how now we can change the system, and that how we're not necessarily going to play with, you know, a back 3 forever when players return, and how it's a different moment and things like that. And now that he's talking this way and talking about change, and we're seeing it. Look, there was tweaks with Bournemouth, tweaks with Wolves, tweaks with Aston Villa, but Newcastle, of course, was the clearest change in system we've seen. And to be clear, though, amusingly now, was it really a change in system? Because I would also argue to you, it was not really a change in system. It was still the 2 midfielders playing the way that they do. Cunha was still dropping into a lot of the same spots. The wingers were still staying high, on Dorgu staying high and wide. The setup was different. The starting formations were different, but the system itself was not really that different. It just was slightly different in terms of the personnel and how they align themselves in certain phases of play was slightly different. We still tried to press wing back to wing back with Shaw pushing up into the press alongside Dorgu on the other side. We still tried to play somewhat quick in transitions. We still did a lot of the build-up movements that we did before we're doing now. The formation itself changed a little. The system itself didn't change much, right? But that's, of course, part of the flexibility within a system once you start to get it, is you can line up a bit differently. You can change the personnel. You can deploy them a little bit different, but the principles stay the same. And, of course, this is what Ruben Amorim was speaking about when he talked about why we can, change the system now. He said that, here, let's look at this part of the quote because this is the important part, okay? He says, today is a different moment. We don't have a lot of players and we need to adapt, but they already know and understand why we are changing. It is not because of the pressure of you guys or the fans. It's because now we understand the way we want to play and the principles are the same. We can change the system, and I think we are going to become a better team because when all the players return, we are not going to play all the time with 3 defenders. We're going to improve, but that was something that I was talking about. But when you talk about changing system all the time, I cannot change because the players will understand that I'm changing because of you, and I think that is the end for the manager. When we are playing well in our system, that is the moment to change. If it's the better thing to win the next game, that's what we did today. And so I think that, again, you have people take that and not understand the issues here. One sec, guys. I'll be right back. We're good. We're good. All good this time. Just people showing up to the door and whatnot. But yes, of course, now what happens here is that, people are taking that comment, and I want to highlight this specific line here where he says that when you talk about changing the system all the time, I cannot change because the players will understand that I'm changing it because of you, and I think that is the end for the manager. Now, it's a window into people's preconceived notions, how they take and understand that line. Because people will think that saying it's the end for a manager is about self-preservation without understanding the concepts around that and what it means. The end of a manager is not a good time for the club. Even if you want the manager to leave. Look at what the end of Ten Hag was. We were in a pit. Look at the end of Oli, in a pit. Look at the end of Rangnick, in a pit. Look at the end of Jose, in a pit. Look at the end of every single manager, and we are in a pit. You know what I mean? So, when you end up in that kind of situation, the problem that you have is what you're actually talking about here when you say the end, when he's talking about the end of a manager, he's talking about the fact that at that point in time, the manager loses control of the dressing room, loses authority of the dressing room. The players start to run the show. The inmates start to run the asylum. That's what happens. So it's not about self-preservation. It's the fact that, and he talked about this months ago and said that the players listen to you. Remember, he said that in a press conference. He said the players listen to you. And if you say the system is shit, the system is shit, the system is shit, and they go, oh, the system is crap. He said it. They listen to the media, which is a bad thing, but they do. You can't avoid it in a modern day. They can't avoid, people don't avoid social media. They can't avoid the media. They can't avoid all of that. So people listen to them. And he said, the players listen to you. And you say to them, the system is bad. The system is bad. The system is bad. The system isn't working. Then what happens? They stop believing in it, or they start to have doubts and they start to think it's not going to work. And he spoke about this a lot. And then what happens? Of course, then if the manager starts going, oh, I've got to change. I've got to change because of this. I've got to change my system now. Then the players are running the show, and that's it. And they're going to do the system they want to do, and they're going to play the way they want to play. And they know that they can just stop. They know they can just stop trying because someone else is saying that the system doesn't work and this doesn't work. And they start to not believe in applying themselves to the situation. And that's the difference. And that's the point he made long ago. It's not about the survival of him as an ego. It's about he is the guy who has to get the players to apply themselves in one direction, right? Yes, Ollie said he suffered from that. And he spoke about, pundits and things like that and such too, because you recognize it at the job at United, that everybody's going to do it and the players are going to listen and the players are going to do this and that. And they're going to follow, and they do give up. And the fact is that where you stand on this is whether you can accept the fact that the players do quit on managers. And you can say, no, they never would. They never would. It's such a terrible thing. But it's just natural. Right? It's just natural, for that to happen. It's just natural for that to happen. If you're in any kind of job and you lose faith or you start to doubt what is going on, then you won't be able to apply yourselves to the maximum. Confidence is so important to application of anything you're trying to do. If you're not confident in it working, if you're not confident in the idea, you won't perform at the same level. Everybody takes the path of least resistance. That's just life. If you think, well, what would be easier? This feels really hard. Not sure I can do it. And you buy into that. And you know that if you do that, probably it's going to change. You have the option to not do it. You have the option to not do it. If you think you can get away with not doing it, you have that option. If you think it's going to change, if you don't do it, then you won't do it. Everybody who's a kid, everybody who's as a kid knows this. What do you do when you when your parents ask you to do something that you don't want to do? You know what you do? You do a shit job of it. It's human nature. Everybody does it. You don't want to do the dishes, so you do a shitty job doing the dishes. You don't want to do the laundry, so you do a shitty job doing the laundry. You don't want to take the trash out, so you spill a little on the floor every time you do it. Sorry, we all know it. You can't fool people. Parents know it because we were kids too. You know it. You can hide it if you want. If you don't want to do something, you do a bad job of it on purpose. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. In hopes that it will change. Just a little. But if you know for certain it's not changing, and you have to, then you buy in. You start to do a better job of it. That's just the facts. That's just the reality. Because then either you buy in or you leave. And what Ruben has talked about in recent times as well, and in these quotes, is how we've seen that application, that he's seen that application from the players, that he's seen that by him. And yes, correct, Ramon, it all changed when Sir Jim came into that interview, right? It all came from that interview where he said he was going to give him time. And from then forward, we've seen his shift in the attitude. The story stopped. The leaks stopped. The shit in the media stopped. The shit from leaks in the dressing room, and there were leaks in the dressing room, stopped. It all stopped. The moment that Sir Jim came out and said that he's not going anywhere, Whether he means it in terms of the 3 years or not doesn't matter. He said he's not going anywhere. He's getting time, and he's going to implement his ideas. It all stopped. Now here we are just a few months later, and he feels confident. They've got the basics. They've got the principles. The team spirit is good. They're working together. They're listening. I've got control of this dressing room. Now we can change. Now we can evolve. Now we can move forward. And now we can do more. And he always intended to. And I'll just pull up the other quotes here. These are from the quotes when he was talking about the Pope from back then. He said, all people talk about is the Pope. Not even the Pope or someone. It will not. This is my job and my responsibility. I will not change that, but I will change the system. Literally, same sentence as this whole
has
Pope
a year
thing.
and a half remaining. Will their final decision of renewal be based on Europe or just want to see improvement on the pitch regardless of Europe at the end of the season?
Both. If we're in the European places and seeing the level of performance we're seeing now, it'll likely be extended. Yeah. I will not change that, but I will change the system. There will be an evolution, but we need to make all the good steps. If I am a player and I have a coach who has a lot of pressure, it doesn't matter if they're all around the world. They are saying, you need to change the system. And in this moment, they will look at me a different way. Everything, when you think about the impact the decision is going to have in the team, everything is important. I will say the same thing. This will have an evolution, and I'm doing things my way, and some guys do things in another way, but it will change. I hope I will have the time to change. It will change, right? So this is months ago. He's saying it's going to change at the right time and evolve, and that's what's happening now. But Jason, to answer your question a little more thoroughly, they're happy with the improvements we're seeing on the pitch right now. If what we're seeing right now continues and we end up in Europe, it's very likely his contract will be extended because he is meeting the targets right now. But yeah, that's what he said months ago. And he said, I want the time. And he talked about how the players listen to the media and how the players listen to what's going on there. And if they think the coach is changing because they're under pressure, then they're going to have no confidence in leadership, right? Then they're going to have no confidence in things moving forward, and they're just going to do things their own way. So you don't have to we don't have to, one of the things with Amorim is you don't have to hunt for meaning. To be quite honest, he's pretty damn honest and pretty damn forthright in what he says. We've talked about this before. He's very revealing in his comments. Why did he change now? Because he was always going to. As soon as he felt like he had full buy-in, as soon as he felt like we have full buy-in, as soon as he felt like the core of the team got the principles, we were going to change. And that's what we're seeing. There's no more conspiracy than that. So Jim hasn't come down and say, change to a 4 at the back. No. Every time, every single week, him and Wilcox get together after every single game to discuss what they're seeing, to discuss what they're doing, to discuss what's going on, to discuss what they're finding, to go over it with the analysts, the data, with all of that, and look at it and say, what are the problems that we're still seeing and how could we fix it? You know what I mean? And now I think we're at a moment where he feels confident. They've laid in enough of the basics and enough of the principles that they can take their findings, where they've seen the weaknesses, why we continue shipping so many goals, and say, good, now we can adjust a little bit to fix it. Now we can adjust a little bit to fix a few of those pieces of information. Now we can take what we've learned and start laying in some little tweaks and adjustments to solve problems and see what happens. It's a joint effort together, as it always is. They're on very good terms. Nobody, they're not in this situation where Wilcox is coming down and saying, you got to change, Ruben. And they haven't been speaking constantly for the last month. They speak every day about things constantly. Remember this project, Barada, Wilcox, and Amorim, they're all very tied together. The idea that there's going to be coming down the line heavy and well, you got to change, Ruben. That it's doesn't make any sense. It's you and your wife see each other and speak 8 hours a day. There's no such thing. You just might have a conversation one day about something, about what to do next, and you constantly evolving in the decision-making process as you go through your life. And that's totally normal. Yes, so Ruben said days ago that he would change. Yeah. Ages ago, yeah. Yeah, there's no boss calls. That doesn't happen. At what point did he see the principles being delivered? Surely no AFCON, the same system sticks. Before AFCON, to be fair, but I believe that AFCON was always viewed as an opportunity and a time to be forced into starting to implement some of those changes. Like, we saw minor adjustments to the system. So here's the interesting part of it, right? Without changing to a back four, we did start to see minor adjustments to the system even slightly before AFCON. Right? And I think that AFCON and the players missing has forced a little bit more dramatic change than we probably would have made as of yet. But prior to AFCON, Bournemouth, Villa, we still had most of our players for those games, right? If I'm not mistaken. Maybe it wasn't Villa. Bournemouth and Wolves. Was it Wolves? Yeah, Bournemouth and Wolves maybe. We saw some adjustments. We saw some differences. We saw it earlier, just before AFCON. And then we saw small adjustments to the team. But then with AFCON, I think it forced a bit more dramatic adjustment to the team, as well as with the injuries and the players missing. Losing De Ligt, Maguire, and Maz. Like, you have to think about right now, we're short 3 center backs. Right? 3 senior center backs. And we're practically lucky that Aiden Heaven is playing when he didn't play for a long time. And we're quite lucky he's performing at a decent level. And we're quite lucky Lissandro can stay fit, because a month ago, you would have looked at it and said, if Maguire, De Ligt, and Mazraoui were missing, we could not, literally, physically couldn't play a back 3. Now we could barely squeeze out a back 3 even if we wanted to. Right? So you have to make changes. And you can't take Casemiro and stick him in the middle, because now you don't have Bruno or Mainu or Mount. You have 2 senior midfielders fit, right? So we almost have to play the current formation. But the adjustments were already kind of coming. Just, I think it's a bit more dramatic than it probably would have looked like if it was not for AFCON and injuries at the same time. It's just a compiling of situations, but it means that we were good to prepare for it. We were good to prepare for it. If Amorim is changing, are we still prioritizing wingbacks? We've never been prioritizing wingbacks. We've been prioritizing wide attackers, and we will still be looking to a wide attacker. Yes, that hasn't changed. We still want a wide attacker. We absolutely do. But yeah, you have seen like Dallo get better in the last few weeks at staying higher up the pitch. You have seen a lot of different principles changed and implemented and things like that. I don't believe that it's the type of thing. And I think that, like, if here's one factor in this, right? Because let's tie it back a little bit to one thing though. If we'd been able to get more of the team built for Amorim, we probably wouldn't see as much adjustment. He's always been willing to adjust to the team at hand. He did it at Sporting as well. He did, even though he stayed with mostly a back 3, he changed the setup quite a bit between the second and third year, if I'm not mistaken, because he had to. He had different forwards, different strikers, different attributes, and he changed the system on the basis of what players that he's got. You're always going to have to do that to a degree. It's more about when and how. If we'd gotten more of the ideal players for his system, we might not have changed much over the course of this season. And in the long term, if we still head in the direction of the ideal setup for him, we will probably see still a lot of his ideal system be showing up later on as well. And the more time he gets, the more success he has this season, the more it will be. But he may also believe by end of the season, it could be different. The system could be a little different. Maybe we swap it. Maybe we change it. You look at one of the things he said in that, by the way, is that, which is, if I'm not mistaken, not what he did at Sporting. Let me just check something. Yeah. So He talked about having a right-footed Ahmad on the left. Well, he didn't actually do that at Sporting. At Sporting, he had Quenda on the right and Maxi Araujo very often on the left. He would often use two left-footers in wingback and do it as a bit of an imbalanced thing. He moved the wingers narrow, and then had, wingers going wide or the wingbacks going wide. He might adjust and say, "That's fine. I want to actually play with wingers. I'm going to play my wingers wide as my forwards. Put in Mbumo wide, get a left winger to play wide." Maybe that was what Semenyo was for. And then invert the wingbacks through the 10s position. He did that before at Sporting. There's different, so there's a lot of different ways. We may sign a wide player and they end up being a left winger and Cunha moves to the 9. It's quite possible. These things can all happen. So there could be still significant kind of tweaks along the way to getting there. But he was seeing a lot of the success with Daulo left wing back and Ahmad right wing back, which is not two wingers, but the two inverted kind of players there. So we'll see. Whatever happens now is fine, but I think that we're seeing what we want now. And the change in system and the changes and the tweaks here has nothing to do with ego. Like I say, I think it's very, unfortunately, I think there's just a lot of people who've made their minds up, and rather than misinterpreting his comments, I think it would be better just to say, you just don't like the manager and leave it at that, because then it explains it, because there's too much by way of twisting words and ignoring the realities of what's been said and ignoring words and things like that and everything. But yes, that's a good point too, James. Amorim's system at Sporting was limited by the quality of players, and a lot of times his best players would get sold. His most important players would get sold. For example, right? He even Yeomand, he played without midfielders who could pass the ball for years, and then he got Yeomand in because he lost Palhinha and Ugarte and such, and ended up with a player who could pass the ball in Yeomand, and it changed the way that he built up through the midfield based on player availability. Well, he might, with Wilcox and Omar, be seeing a higher ceiling than his original system with the right players coming in. He might be looking at that and saying, we could actually take this further than I thought possible at Sporting, with better players, with more well-rounded players, with more flexible players, with more all-rounders. Like, take a player like Elliot Anderson, for example, right? Let's just think about Elliot Anderson for one moment as an example of a player. You ain't going to get anybody like Elliot Anderson for him at Sporting. He used a player in Morita that he really liked that did a lot of stuff. But if you look at Elliot Anderson, you're not getting that at Sporting. He wasn't going to get that at Sporting, right? You take a guy who can do everything. Win the ball at a high rate, dribble, pass, carry, incredible box-to-box, all-around midfielder. You can do more with that player than a limited player, right? So maybe your system was, it's building up only through the wide areas. You're doing it that way. And now you're getting midfielders who can do everything. Well, that does change the way you can play. That does change the way you want to do the system. Maybe that means you can do something different, even in your formation at times, because you have more options. And when you come to a club like United, that's what happens. I mean, I think that Jurgen Klopp's system evolved at Liverpool. Would you say that Klopp, beyond his press, would have used fullbacks the same way as he did with Trent and Robertson before he had Trent and Robertson? Because I don't think so. He definitely had a way of attacking, but I don't think he would have used the fullbacks in the same way that he evolved into using them in the setup that way, without them, and without having those types of guys. Obviously, look at Pep looking at the ability to get Erling Haaland and saying, I'm going to change the way I play football to suit this bulldozer number 9 that he never actually played with before, that type of player. But he had access to him. He had access to get a bulldozer, most physical, maybe best striker in the world, and said, well, if I can do that, I could evolve my system. And that should be done. If you can get access to better players, evolve, and then he went into trouble. So, that is a good point as well, James. I think that's a very good point in that, looking at it with Wilcox, you might be going, listen, Ruben, you're not shopping in the, in the dregs of Portugal right now to build a team. You're not shopping there. If we look at the next window, we could do more than you think. You're looking at it and saying, I just need hardworking midfielders. And you might be saying, we could get you better than that. And how would that change things if you had, elite general type midfielders who could do it all? How would it change things if, you had forwards who could do it all? How would it change if you had a striker who could run the channels and, score goals and win the ball? There's a lot of things that could change there. And he looked at his back three and said, look, one of the principles of his back three is he wanted to simplify the games. He wanted players to be in the channels that they play, right? The three channels, the central space, the half spaces, and the wide areas. And you have 5 channels, and you have your 5 players in those channels. So everything goes in the vertical lines because it's simpler. What if you get players who can understand the game beyond the simplicities? And maybe you don't need that anymore. Maybe now you've got players comfortable shifting across channels better. Maybe you've got players shifting into different areas better, and you're going to get players who can understand that, who have that quality. Maybe you're getting players who are more comfortable going between in-game, a 3, a 4, a 5 at different moments in the game. And now you don't have to have a formation. Now you could have a whatever. It could be a 5 when you want it to be a 5. It can be a 3 in the right moments. It could be a 4 in build-up. Maybe. Who knows? That there's a lot of that goes into it. Yeah, formation itself is sort of overrated. Like I said, against Newcastle was interesting because there was a formation change, but a lot of the ideas remain the same. If anything, though, I will say one thing I thought was missing was the pressing. There was some moments of good pressing, but there was a bunch of times where they left a man open where they usually would have had somebody pressing in there because they changed the shape of it and they were pressing with 4 instead of 5. And there was a couple moments like that, and I went, they got to sort that out because they were missing something in how they lined up because of that. But that's another discussion. But yeah, so it's just different. It's just different. But it's also just evolution, that was always intended. So I hope it works, right? Because I'll be honest with you guys, at the same time, I'll tell you what's really funny, okay? I'm more nervous now than I was 2 weeks ago. And it's funny seeing all this praise for change, but I'm looking at that Newcastle game and I was going, it wasn't better. It wasn't better. It wasn't better. It definitely wasn't better. There was aspects that were nice, but it wasn't better. None of it was better. Our build-up wasn't better. I remember reviewing the game and saying we'd have an open guy in that huge space that we could send the ball into and get into attack, and instead nobody was there, and we never outnumbered Newcastle in attack, ever. Not once in the whole game. We never created overloads like we were before. I looked at that and I go, God, I hope our adjustment doesn't make us play worse football, because I hope we don't go backwards to be more defensive. Now, maybe they are thinking, well, we're going to grind out the second half of the season. We only saw it for 1 half, for sure, and we're missing so many players. But at the same time, it was not so much the personnel, but the numbers. I looked at the numbers and I said, we're attacking with fewer players than we were before. So is this better, or is this just a necessity for the moment? I hope it was just a necessity for the moment. You know what I mean? That's my hope. It was just a needs must type of thing. And maybe we will have more needs must games. And maybe the decision will be that moving forward, we need to grind out a few more games. You know, this is horse shit. Many people felt that it was better. Who? Who? Okay, let's see. Let's see it being better. Let's look at the stats. Yep. There we go. Better. So it's now 33% possession is better. Now 33% possession is better. Now getting outshot and conceding 16 shots in a game is better. Okay. Conceding 11 corners is better. It wasn't better. It was different. It was calm to a degree in the first half. It certainly wasn't better, but it was what it was. You know, we ended up not conceding. We won. That's good. Was it better than our win against Wolves? No. Was it better than our win against Brighton or Liverpool? Was it better? No. Absolutely not. It was definitely not better. I think the only people who think it was better are the people who've been begging for change that claimed that immediately it looked better. It didn't look better. It was whatever. It was okay. I think most of us were sitting there stressed as hell during the game. Villa was a much better game, much better performance against a better team away in more of context. But we were missing players. It's fine. That's what I'm saying. The performance, the game was okay. There's nothing wrong with the game. What I'm saying with that is that we don't know if it would be better because it wasn't better. We don't know if it would be better with better players. That's where we don't know. You know what I mean? It was survival football. It was definitely not better than these other games. That's for sure. I mean, one could make the argument that it was calmer because Bruno didn't play. You ever think about that? Because some of us have made that argument for some time. Maybe it was calmer because Bruno wasn't playing. And the middle was compact. And you had two defensive midfielders in the center cleaning up instead of Bruno giving the ball away constantly, rushing it up the pitch. I'm making a dramatic argument there, not even trying to criticize Bruno, but you could make that argument. You could just say it had nothing to do with the system. It was because Bruno wasn't playing. Could be right. Could be right. You know, that could be true too. Fact is, it wasn't better. It was different. It's not like we haven't won games earlier this season that looked better than that. But we'll see when we have more players back. When we have more players back, I don't think it'll look the same anyway. You know, so it's sort of irrelevant. I think it was a needs-must game. I think it was definitely a needs-must game, you know, at that point. Casemiro also had 91% passing instead of 77%. That made a huge difference. But I'll point to another stat. We've won 8 of our last, 13 games when Casemiro and Ugarte start in the middle. Maybe it's because of Casemiro and Ugarte. Maybe it has nothing to do with the system. Fact is, we don't know because we have such a small sample size. But I think the point here that we should be able to all agree on, because I think anything else is disingenuous, is that we didn't see enough to say that was better. It was just different. We got a very, very small sample size in a very small game that was okay, and we were missing tons of players. So I think we could all agree what we saw so far was different, but I don't believe it was better. I think it was different. We've had much better first halves than that, and we've had much worse first halves than that this season. So better, worse, I don't know, different at this point in time. Certainly, I wouldn't say better, though, at that point in time. You know, but it was okay, and I'm okay with that. But I am slightly more nervous that I don't want to see us slide too far into pragmatism. Now, with players out, it's a time. But I didn't take that game and say, well, now I feel more confident for the future because we've changed and we won't go back to what we're doing. No, I want us to be able to go back closer to what we were doing against Villa and Wolves last game. Like, I'd like to see us play more like we did against Villa and Wolves than I did like to see us how we played against Newcastle. So I hope we don't go too far in one direction. You know, I want to see us be more compact. I think the way we played in previous games, if we just played with a more compact midfield, we would have been fine anyway. With better midfielders, I think that would have solved a lot of the problems we had anyway. You know? So I just hope we don't go too far one direction or the other. And that's the main thing. Either way that we're looking at now. It did feel kind of Eric-y after Bandit's ideals. But it was a little like that. If you look at after the first 2 games that Eric lost, the third game, it will look like that Newcastle game. Even our Liverpool victory, it'll look like that. Yeah. But then again, we were missing an enormous number of players, so it happens. You know, that I can excuse it. As a reminder, guys, and the link is below to this, tomorrow I will be live for the watch along, and the competition is now live for United versus Wolves. Cunha to score, Šeško to score, Xerxes to score, or give an assist, probably not. We'll talk about that one here in a second. Dorgu, these are interesting ones, especially since it's against Wolves. Are we going to rack up the goals? And will one of these 3 guys score? Well, if anybody's going to score, it's probably one of these 3, and probably not Joshua Xerxes. But yeah, go and get in the competition. Obviously, we'll be live for the watch along there tomorrow for the game, and you'll have about 24 hours to enter into that. Let's speak briefly about Josh Xerxes, though. So we were kind of talking about this the other day, and then Fabrizio kind of confirmed this as well, that there is a deal agreed for Joshua Xerxes to leave to Roma. It's agreed. It's ready. It's all on the table. It's up to United to approve it or not. And it's an obligation, too. It's a sale, right? This is a sale. This is him done at United permanently. And it's on the table. And it feels like we are accepting him leaving now. It feels like we are letting him go. That's what it feels like. We want him. We're ready to move him on permanently, but we don't want to be short. Here's a question for you guys. Do you think we could manage letting Xerxes go for the rest of the year without bringing a forward in? Once AFCON ends and our players return. I think so. I've been thinking about this more and thinking, would I let Xerxes go even without replacement? Once AFCON is over and our players return. And I think the answer is yes. Because I'd rather see the minutes be going to youth now, personally. And I don't think there's that many minutes available. When everybody returns, we would have... I'm not saying we don't need more players, but I want to poll this. But we've got Šeško, Cunha, Mount, Mbumo, Ahmad. I feel like I'm missing players. Lacey, who's now debuted. Potentially, could you push Bruno back up into the front 3? Could you push Bruno back up into the front 3 now that we're being more flexible and go with the Casemiro Ugarte midfield? Could Kobbie Bruno play in the front 3? You've got a lot of options who could play up there. You've got a lot of options who could play in the front line. Even if you're playing in a different formation, even now we've seen Dorgu can play as a winger in this system. You know? So I think I look at that and I go, if we could get our 30 million back at the end of the season, it frees up more funds for summer. You know? I think I would do it. I think I would do it without replacement. Does that mean I don't think they should try to get somebody else in? No. Of course we should try to get somebody else in. I think I'd let him go after AFCON, regardless, and see if you can get somebody. But don't tie those decisions together. I think it's time to be ruthless. And I think that the decision's already been made, to be quite honest. I think he's going to go. And if it covers our costs, then good. It just gives us more freedom in the future. You know what I mean? It gives us more freedom in the future. It depends on the money, obviously, right? Like we can't make a loss on it. If it covers our costs, gets the amortization off of the books where we saves us the 8, 10, 12 million a year, then do it. I think it would be like 8 million a year or something like that it would save us. Then do it, because if that can go fund another player, go for it. If that could go fund a young winger or another center back or a third midfielder, do it. I was so disappointed in that Newcastle game, and I don't like giving up on players. I like to give them a lot of time. I was just so disappointed in what I saw as the application of that game, of his appearance against Newcastle, that I go, I can't have any more attachment. I can't. I can't. I would have rather seen someone else come on. I saw Fletcher come on and give more. I saw Malacia come on and give more. I saw Fredrickson come on and give more. I saw Ugarte, who's been more maligned than him. Fewer games and all that. More criticized. Far less backing from fans and things. Give more. Kind of a bummer, honestly, because I didn't expect that. I thought he was going to come on and fire. I mean, maybe he'll play against Wolves and it changes our mind again. But yeah, right now my feeling is to let him go. Yeah, right now my feeling is let him go. Let's poll it. If, like, I'm not saying we shouldn't go for a replacement. I want to make this question clear. I'm not saying we shouldn't look for a replacement anyway, but would his departure be yes, do it? You're looking for a replacement anyway, or only if you have a replacement, or we should keep him? We'll do the team vote in a minute, guys, and then we'll do our predicted lineups. %75% so far, 69%, 68%. Saying just do it. I think the fit is wrong too. That's part of the issue, right? I think that's a problem too. The fit is just wrong. So regardless of anything else, it just doesn't feel like he fits here. So it's probably a good idea just to move him on. Wow, 0 votes for keep. Yeah, that's... You probably get more votes for keep for Ugarte right now. Well, there's 1 vote. Like, if you were to ask right now, after the game we just saw, where we see once again evidence that Ugarte can work in the right setup, I honestly think you'd get a very, very different swing in the vote here if we were talking Ugarte right now. Like, I don't think anybody would let Ugarte go without replacement right now. And that's probably a lot different to how these polls would have been flipped a month ago, to be honest. Yeah, someone definitely did it on purpose after I mentioned it. I was worried when he missed all summer, honestly, because he was a player I had high hopes for in summer, like kicking off, you know what I mean? And like really going for it. And then he was injured all summer, and I was like, it just feels like that's the end. I just had this like back of my mind feeling after Xerxes missed all of preseason that might be one of those like unfortunate moments, but results in the end of a player's time at a club. When does a player agree terms with another club then end up staying? Don't know. Oh. Yeah, so there's the vote. 72% just let him go. 25% only with replacement, and keep is 2. So, yeah, I would say, yeah. I think everybody's on the same page there. I would kill for a Cavani regen. You have no idea how much I would kill for a Cavani regen. Because I also think we need someone for Šeško to learn off of. You know what I mean? I think we need someone for Šeško to learn off of really, 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 really bad. Like really, really bad. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm worried about it because I want to see more. I feel we don't have anybody for Šeško to drop behind, to rotate with, to learn the like number 9 movements. And I don't need a regen. I'm saying give me an old guy. I don't care. I just want someone for him to learn off of, to be like the striker movements. You know what I'm saying? The movement in the final third, the movement in the box, the way you attack the posts and things like that. I just want someone like that. And I don't think we have anybody to learn off of. It could be an older guy, but yeah. Yeah, Welbeck. I would take Welbeck back in a heartbeat right now. Because like if Šeško's learning from Xerxes, you know, that's not going to get us anywhere. Like we're still lacking that. I still think we're lacking that, and we're going to need to see more of it by end of the season. We need more goals from our striker. And some of that comes down to movement, and some of that comes down to as a 9, because Šeško's a very good footballer. I think he needs a little bit of help becoming a real number 9. Because we need more. And I think to get where we need to be by end of the season, we need more than that. We need more than we have right now. So yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's the Xerxes situation. It's a crazy one, isn't it? But yeah, it feels like the end, doesn't it? Let's talk about the game tomorrow here then real quick. So looking at, obviously, as I said yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday, you got the early news on this. I told you that Mount and Mainu were very likely out for Wolves, which I believe Amorim said they're likely out for Wolves, and we're likely getting nobody back for Wolves. So given that, I think the lineup kind of picks itself, though we have a couple of small questions. So I want to do the vote with you guys because I'm really curious what you think. Given the lack of players coming back, we probably still have to play a 4. We only have Lissandro. If we were to play a back 3, we'd only have Lissandro, Shaw, Evan, and Yoro. And 3 of them are left-footed. And that means you only have 1 potential senior sub. But that also means you've got to go with Dallo, Shaw, Lissandro, Heaven, Dorgu, Casemiro, Ugarte. Maybe it works. I'm not sure. Maybe we do it anyway. But like, let me think about that for 1 second. Who would you drop? Yeah, Fredrickson on. I was looking at seniors. Who would you drop from the starting lineup? Let's say Lacey came in to replace Mount, and you switch to who's getting dropped? Someone else is getting dropped. No, you're just changing shape. Nobody's getting dropped. You're just moving the 10 up front and Dorgu out wider. Yeah, so interesting. So yeah, I don't think we have any much by way of choice. I guess it'll look like however it looks like, but it's not going to change much. We'll set it up in a 4-2-3-1, but it could very easily be a 3-4-3 at times. Really depends. It could be. I feel as though the 3-4-3 that slides into a 4-4-2 might be better. But it would have to go the other way. We'll look at it. Let's vote. Let's vote on our lineup. I'm going to plug a bunch of players in because we really don't have a choice here, okay? We know that Cunha is going to have to play. We know that it's going to be Casemiro and Ugarte. Like, it's not even a question, right? We know that these two are playing. We know that Shaw is going to be in the team. We could vote on the center backs just in case. We know that Dallo and Dorgu are going to be playing in some sort of context, right? Like this team is pretty much the team. So I think the question becomes, it gets a little bit weird here. Who should play in that other position? It could be a 10. It could be up front. It could be a midfielder. It could be up front. You think Heaven and Martinez, but I only thing I want to say is that what if Lissandro can't start? I wanted to bring that up because Ruben's usually very careful about managing players. Lissandro has started on Thursday. We're playing on Tuesday. He might not be cleared for quick turnarounds because he played more minutes than he was supposed to. So that's why I wanted to. Should we start Lissandro? I say Lissandro should start on merit, but I don't know if I would start Lissandro because personally, my opinion, I'd be worried about injuries for him after the game he just played. I might go Heaven and Yoro, but then I might want to go to a back three so that you have Shaw to be in a line with them. I don't know. It's going to be confusing. I'm just bringing that up as a curiosity. You guys can vote for it either way. I'm not actually sure if he could start. So let's say this 10/CM/ it could be a right 10. So this could be, depending on who you pick, it could be Lacey, Fletcher, or it could be even Xerxes, technically. Who should be that forward? I don't know. Who should be in that forward spot? And then we can move it around and it could be like a bunch of different formations and shit. Lacey on the left wing and Cunha in the AM. So, as I understand it, Lacey's been playing more in the center and right in training, but Cunha always drops into the middle regardless of where he plays, which is fine. That's just what he does. Cunha 10, Lacey wide, but remember, the shape can change. So don't worry about the shape so much. We'll move it around. I'm saying maybe you form the shape based on the players you're picking. You know what I'm saying? That's how I'm looking at it. Okay, so people want Lacey to start. I agree. I would like to see Lacey to start. Because here's what I'm getting at, right? Let's say you go with Lacey. All right, you could do this then. You could go back to your 3-4-3. See what I mean? And then slide these players over. So, if you're picking Fletcher, you're probably going 4-2-3-1. But if you pick Lacey, you could go back to the 3 and go like this. And he would play in a natural position there. Because it's the same players, otherwise. So it's more attribute based. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what we're going to see. But if we're going with Lacey, maybe you go back to the 3-4-3 against Wolves, especially since it's Wolves. you know? That was kind of my point on don't worry so much about the formation right now. Let's just see who would we like to see play, you know, on the pitch. Because it doesn't change, the players aren't going to change. We're going to have 2 center backs in, you know? Should we go Lissandro or Heaven on the left / maybe central center back? Just depending on, and you could vote for Heaven for the other spot too, by the way. So, but this would be like left / center. Should we go for Lissandro on the short turnaround? You can still vote for Heaven on the other position. This doesn't eliminate Heaven from being in the team if you vote Lissandro here. Maybe I should have, you know what? I'm going to do it differently because I think this is going to get confusing. I'm going to do it differently because I think this will get confusing. CBs. Should it be Lissandro, Heaven, Lissandro, Yoro? Oops, because we only have 3. Heaven, Yoro. There, let's do that. Which combo do you guys want to see? But Wolves also play a different system too, right? So an interesting wrinkle here is that, once again, he said Newcastle. I pointed this out, by the way, about Newcastle in his comments after the game, that it was a focus on fighting the center of the pitch. And he spoke about that in the presser today. He said that against Newcastle specifically, they physically dominate us in those areas. So we loaded up the middle as well. That's a big thing about Newcastle. They're very fast, very physical midfield. We nullified it. Wolves is a totally different story. They have no Andre. They play a back 3. They have João Gomez in the middle, who's not the most physically imposing player. And they play wide. Is a narrow formation the best way to go here? I think we need to play wide and match them to find the spaces that we need to find in the team again. That's my feeling as well, why I think we might go back to the 3 again. Because a 3 is probably the best against their team right now. We don't really need to pack the middle against Wolves. In fact, I think that might nullify our best chances. I think we can attack them through the wide areas really well. But hey, we'll see. All right, so you guys want Lissandro Heaven. So essentially, you guys want the same side that played before. But with the one change. So yeah, look, like this could be like this. I tend to agree with the team. This could be like this. It could be like this. It could be a lot of different things, you know? I think that might work best against Wolves. I think that might work best against Wolves. With Lacey, getting him in that right 10 position. That could work. What do you guys think? Let's do one more poll. Would you like to see this in the 3-4-3 or the 4-2-3-1/4-3-3? Not that it makes that much of a difference, to be quite honest. But which one would you rather see this team in? This shape or like this shape? Which one do you think looks better on paper? Could even be like this. It doesn't matter. Just like the 4-2-3-1 with this 11, or the 3, or going back to a 3 with it like kind of like this. Which one do you think is better for this team? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, to be honest. I think it just depends what he thinks is going to work best against Wolves. Leacha just makes our defense better. I wish we could. He also solves a lot of build-up problems. You know? Solves a lot of build-up problems, especially going with... Remember, you know, I'll tell you one other little small, fun, interesting wrinkle here, right? Is we know that we dropped Bruno deep when Lissandro got injured last year. Now that Lissandro is back, maybe Bruno... And we didn't have Bruno in that game. Maybe Bruno doesn't have to play deep because we finally have this 4-4-2 diamond. But the 4-4-2 is pretty much the 3-4-3, isn't it? Like this, right? It just drops like this. It's just how you drop it, right? It just goes like that. Or it can swing the other way. Because we swing both ways around here. And it can look like that. But that's more closely aligned to the 3-4-3 than it is the 4-2-3-1, I think. But hey, maybe we'll be surprised and Mount will be fit and it'll change all this. I'm assuming Mount isn't based on the press conference and things like that. So I'm just going to assume he's not. Maybe he will. What team did I pick? I think I went with the same team as you guys. Yeah, I did. I went with the same team. I set it up in a 4-2-3-1, but it doesn't really matter. All right. So you guys preferred this setup in the 3-4-3. So I think what you guys would like to see, and I would agree with you, I want to see this. You could then, if Lissandro needs a break, put Euro here, right? And it would be fine. And this would be the 3-4-3. But yeah, I would like to see this with Lacey, personally. I'd like to see this. Yes, Mainu's definitely out, I believe. Bruno's definitely out. Delict, Maguire's out. Mount is sort of an unknown, but it sounds like he's out. We just don't know. So, yeah, hopefully not long, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. But yeah. There you go. There you have it. It is what it is. That's what we'd like to see. Okay. There you go. That's it. I think we'll end it there. Once again, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you for hanging out with me. It's been fun. I'll be back, obviously, tomorrow for the pre-match around lineups, and then for the watch-along and the post-match and all of the usual thing. Again, make sure go get your entries in for the game tomorrow at the link below. And let's see what happens. We're in the next phase. We're in the next phase of United with all these players out and AFCON and everything. So let's see how things go. Game day. Big win to end the year would feel very, very good right now. Feel very, very good right now and put us in a good position. So let's see what happens, okay? Thank you for watching today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. Appreciate all the comments, donations, all of that. Everybody so far, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your week, and I will catch you all